So I want to talk to you today about a really interesting concept that I first read about in this book. It's a book by Al Rice and Laura Rice, who I think it's his wife. I'm pretty sure. It could be his daughter. But Al has co-written many books going back to the 80s with another guy by the name of Trout. Jack Trout, I think. Anyways, I bought this book in the early 2000s, 2005 or 6. And it was published around 2003 or 4. And it's called The Fall of Advertising and the Rise of PR. The Fall of Advertising and the Rise of PR. I love this book. And I love anything to do with marketing and information on marketing. You might call me a bit of an info junkie. I've got a pretty big library on this topic. And some of the books just bubble to the surface as being some of my all-time favorites. Perhaps I'll make a quick video highlighting some of those favorites. Anybody who's been into marketing for any period of time, who's a bit of a junkie like me, knows most of the books, if not all of them, but I'll get to that later. So this book, and you can tell, I like it. Post-it notes, but not only that, a lot of the pages have got, they're dog-eared and they're marked. And when I have a book like this that I really enjoy, I will go through it again, and all the stuff I highlighted or marked, I will write it out in a Word file. So I'll create a summary of the very best. That way I can go back and reread it. I've done that many, many times, and I'm in the process of doing it with this one. This one's a little bit of a gem. I forgot I had it. You know, we're in this shutdown pandemic situation, so I went into my library the other day and I just thought, I just went through all my books and I was like, oh yeah, I always remember that book as being one of my most all-time favorites. So there's a lot to this book and there's a lot to the idea, but the core concept's right in the title: The Fall of Advertising and the Rise of PR. In other words, public relations. In other words, branding. In other words, well, a whole lot of other words. So I want to tell you and share with you one of the core principles. At the very start of the book, he talks about and uses the example of candles. How candles used to be a utilitarian thing. We used candles for light and we needed them. Candles were not that expensive and they were produced in mass quantity. So when the light bulb got invented and we no longer needed candles, did the demand for candles go away? No. Candles turned into an art form. And this is the core idea. Things that no longer have a utility turn into an art form. And that's what happened to advertising. Advertising used to be very informational. Back in the early days, they used to talk about facts and features, and it eventually evolved into an art form. So it lost its utility and it became an art form. Let me quote you something by Marshall McLuhan, the great Marshall McLuhan. He said, "Advertising is the greatest art form of the 20th century." And, this is true. I mean, you can go in offices, you can go into major museums around the world, and they will have permanent collections of posters framed and hanging, posters of all kinds of famous ads, like Absolute Vodka and Nike and what have you. So a lot of advertising has become art. There are other examples. Think of horses. Horses were very utilitarian at one time until cars replaced them. And what happened to horses after cars replaced them? Horses became art. They put on horse shows. There's all different branches of different horse shows that are put on. And that's where it's evolved to. We don't need horses, but we love horses just like we love candles. What dining experience is not complete without a couple of candles on the table, or Christmas time, or at any special event? So candles have become romantic. Horses have become romantic. They've all become art forms. Some of the other examples that I've sort of created in my own head are like albums. Now, when I was a teenager, I had crates of albums. I loved my albums. They had a big utility for me. They literally saved my life because I loved my music so much. It kept me sane. Well, we don't have albums anymore. We don't even have CDs anymore. We have Spotify. So it's not so much an art form, but the old version of albums has now become an art form. So I was in a used record store the other day, and it's a bit of a niche. And there was my Rush album, the first Rush album I ever bought. And they wanted like $150 for it. Crazy. So what about photography? Photography was a utility. At one time, it was relatively cheap. You can go get your family portrait done. Think back 100 years ago. It was very much mass produced. Back in the early days, a photographer would roll into town with a horse-drawn carriage and a portable darkroom, and people would line up around the corner. So it was a volume experience, but it was a very valuable experience at the same time. Nowadays, everybody's a photographer. Cell phones, we're all photographers. So the final example, and this is the one represented in this book, is advertising. Advertising has become an art form. It seems to me, and to many who have authored this book and similar books, that the acquisition of accolades and awards and a bit of ego stroking is more important to an advertising agency than the acquisition of more profits and sales for the business owner. A lot of people sadly don't understand this, but if you understand this, you will change your marketing angle, your marketing strategy. When you think about ad agencies and you think about big ads like television and radio, most of it is turned into an art form. You'll even see specials on TV, the greatest Super Bowl ads of all time. And you won't see a lawyer show on lawyers like the greatest and finest briefs from the legal world of all time, or you won't see a lawyer hanging up their greatest legal briefs framed on their walls. You won't see that. But you go to an ad agency and you'll see their most creative ads hung up everywhere, as well as other places. So most ads will entertain. They make you laugh. But it doesn't necessarily mean you'll remember them, or more importantly, it doesn't mean that you'll necessarily buy the product. There's a lot of studies that have been proven that when you increase the artisticness of it, it doesn't necessarily mean the results are there. So the utility of an ad is to get clients, to either buy more often, to buy more when they do go to buy, and to acquire new clients. And that should be the only criteria for any advertising. To get more clients, to increase the amount of sales that a client is going to purchase, and the frequency of their purchases. Now, of course, you're not going to use slime ball techniques to try and get more sales or to increase the amount of money, because you're going to do damage. And it's a given that you are going to be fair and honest, and you're going to deliver a product that is something that your client values. And it's funny that when something that used to be a utility becomes an art form, the price goes up. There are home parties for candles, and candles will be like $30, $40 each. It's crazy. So you got to ask yourself, do you want art, or do you want responsible, accountable advertising for your business? And this is a bit of a different direction that one has to take in. So in a sense, something I've always said, marketing is everything. And marketing is all about being accountable and serving your clients. Serving your clients, if you're going to sell your clients, selling is serving and doing what is right, what is best, what is fair, and what will produce the best results. Not something that's really creative and massages the egos of whomever so that you can create a piece of art, hang on your wall, because that's not necessarily going to move your clients. Something to think about, isn't it?